Hi Chuck, how are you?
Good.
We've been working together for how long now, Chuck?
A couple of years.
Time flies when you're having fun, huh? A lot of people understand or think they understand what a family office is, and you're kind of unique because you're a third generation family office. So could you tell us a little bit about the history of your family office, or what you're doing and what your theme is and where you're at these days?
My grandfather formed it actually 100 years ago. It would have been essentially this week. He organized and raised 2/3 of the money for an IPO of this company in Georgia that they tried to sell themselves 3 times unsuccessfully. He took it on for the 4th time. They locked up the options and he brought it public, and it was called Coca-Cola. He was concerned about the management of the bank. The Guaranty Trust was the big bank in New York. And so he wanted leadership, so he found this much smaller bank that didn't have the capital, and he acquired it. It was called J.P. Morgan, and he bought the whole bank. And he was a disruptor. My father was a disruptor. We're now doing that in healthcare, and we see that there's some real needs. The funding schema and the ecosystem for life science funding is fundamentally broken, and we've enjoyed working with you and fixing it.
What I'm hearing is that you're a third generation family office. You guys come from a tradition of having a view of the world to make it better, make it flourish more, and then you do some businesses or initiatives that helps make that vision
right.
reality.
We do it on both sides. We have, as most family offices do, the nonprofit side. My grandfather, father, and I have been focused on philanthropy has always been a big part of it. And then the for-profit side, but we're now moving with some initiatives to really help family offices, particularly those with $1 billion or less under management, focus on how they can actually be an important part of the life science ecosystem.
So you mentioned family offices. A lot of people get confused. There's single family offices and multi-family offices. There's assets under management. There's all sorts of metrics on how you evaluate and categorize family offices. Could you give me a little insight about how it works?
Well, in the U.S., multi-family office is very different than multi-family office in Europe. Multi-family office in Europe tends to be a consortium of family offices that are smaller, working together. In the U.S., that's true, but the people that actually manage it are much more vendors and gatekeepers. I mean, they have their own ecosystem for investments, and that's fine. You just have to realize who they are. And it's sort of hard to get through to them. You have 2 types of family offices. You have the very large, like the Michael Dells, with $12 billion or so under management. He can pick up the phone and get whoever he wants on the phone. He has a team that can do stuff. The real problem is with the billion and under.
So 100 million to $1 billion?
100 million to $1 billion is a good sized family office, and they're a lot like endowments for universities. There are 91 endowments that have more than $1 billion for universities. They're very well organized. It's under $1 billion where they are not organized and they need some help. And that's one of the things that we're focused on, is that because we're a family office, we can have a conversation that other people cannot have with them, and we're kind of one of them. And we're not vending stuff. What we're doing is we're working collaboratively with them, and they appreciate it. And one of the things we did last year is that we set out to seek, would people be willing to come together on life science and healthcare? And we got 360 family offices that have been meeting several times a year in 19 cities, in 6 countries, and 3 continents, and we curated. There is no other network like this in the world. We know that there's interest, and so what we're now doing is we're helping and we're forming study groups this year so we can study some of the things like Alzheimer's, cancer, and obesity, diabetes, which many families have. They have some other chronic diseases. So to the effect that they have a family member that has a problem, they're already in the life science business. Whether they know it or not. And what we're trying to do is organize it. We're aiming to have some white papers, because before you make an investment, you ought to understand you should ask the question, what are the issues out there and where are the opportunities for us to invest? And then what we're doing next year is that we're developing some opportunities for co-investment with some of the things that we're doing and others are doing, other family offices are doing. I think it's going to be very interesting.
So the Stetson Family Office, over the last couple of years, your predominant activities, can you categorize them into 1, 2, or 3 things you're working on?
Historically, we've been a money manager,
Right.
And we still are a money manager. Institutional money and some families. We're moving now to all family offices, really not doing institutional, with one exception. We have a foundation, healthcare foundation, that we will do some institutional management on that.
The last several years, the Stetson Family Office, what are the primary things that you guys are focused on?
Well, historically, we've done private equity. I moved the family into private equity in the 1994 timeframe.
So that's the for-profit side.
That's the for-profit side, and on the not-for-profit side, we manage an education foundation. We're now taking that skill set in getting the word out to healthcare, which really needs it. We need it particularly in 2 ways. It needs it in the better health at lower cost effort, which is, it really fits the not-for-profit model.
Right.
And we're also working huge opportunity with accelerators, nonprofit accelerators in the 0 to 3 time frame. That's before typically you guys get involved, but to help shape the best ideas, make sure they get properly funded, become the first institutional capital.
So this is seed and angel money then?
This is before seed and angel money.
So where is this, granted foundations?
No, it's typically doing a debt convertible into the first real round of financing.
Okay, so convertible notes.
Convertible notes.
Okay.
Some people ask, well, in a nonprofit, what happens when you get a distribution? Actually, it goes right back into the
It's
nonprofit because they're the owners,
Right.
and we grow it. And what we're working with a number of cities we've looked at and communities. We've looked at 36 communities defined as cities, regions, and states. And we've got 12 that we think can be the next Kendall Square, and we're working with them. We've got 3 that we think in the next year or so we can raise $50 million for. We've already got a lot of the money identified.
Typically, they've got NIH grants, they've got some seed money, they meet you guys, they meet your organization, and then they're able to get some convertible notes so they can get enough data and enough development so they can then go for officially seed
Right.
or
Well,
rounds.
that's the ultimate goal.
Okay.
As you know, between Boston and Washington, you've identified 78 incubators. They all don't have money.
Right.
Very few of them have any money at all.
Right.
So what we're looking about and saying is, hey guys, what you really need is capital, because how are you going to attract the top people, that managers? You're only going to attract the top managers if you have capital available, and the people that are the smartest executives. You don't have to say, we'll give you this money. They typically come in, they figure they're pretty smart, and they're going to figure out a way to get your money.
You've got a model. It looks like there's plenty of incubators that are sprouting up around the world that are gathering the forces to get some dollars in, and then you're coming with your idea, which is what, the Global Family Office BioForum?
Well, the family offices, I think, are going to be one of the key groups that can help organize all of this effort. And we're also working with foundations and the like. In the U.S., we need the initial capital to organize so that the A round can be a much more efficient organization. And when you're using philanthropic capital, you can bring in the executives in residence and the mentoring that is needed, because as a practical matter, you're not going to get that in the for-profit world. This is the only system that works, and I think that we're building a bigger ecosystem with what you're doing and what we're doing, and we have partnered with the Angel Capital Association, so we're bringing angels and family offices together. And there's a key segment of the market that's not being addressed. The therapeutics is being addressed. That fits the venture capital model. They want to put $50 million to work in 10 companies in a $500 million fund. And they want it out there for 12 to 15 years so they can collect their fee and get the upside.
And
Okay?
maybe one hits.
And maybe one hit. The family offices don't want that because they get buried in a $250 million round that the venture capitalists will play in with their $50 million.
Right.
So it's a mismatch.
Right.
Where the family offices and angels really fit
Right.
is in diagnostics. Because diagnostics you can actually do for up to, from start to finish, to 15, maybe 20 million, but you can certainly do it
Isn't that the same with devices as well?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Digital
Devices,
health.
digital health.
Yeah.
All of this stuff can be done.
Right.
And by the way, it doesn't fit the venture capital model. So what we're doing is we're carving out an area within life science that is critically important. And what we're doing is that we're working on building an ecosystem. And yes, you can have the conferences, but you really need to have a full ecosystem. And we've been talking with you about bringing in some of the top companies that are being developed in places like Finland, Austria, Queensland, Taiwan. I mean, this is great. They need to come to the U.S. They need to be trained on the U.S. markets because they typically have no idea what to do.
Right.
And they need a little bit of executive in residence type of guidance and the like. And you have your training program here,
Right.
and we're very tied into a number of those countries. We visit them regularly,
Right.
and I think it's a wonderful way of kind of working together. But we need a better system than
Right. It's not
is.
working.
The current conference system, by and large, is not working,
Right.
and that's why I like working with LSN, because we can build this bigger ecosystem that really has to happen in life science.